have been with the law for about 25 years. For those of you who have been lucky enough to deal, or unlucky enough, I guess, to deal with anybody from our firm, we primarily do municipal work, a lot of fire district work, a lot of police and fire pension work, village work, school district work. And over the 25 years that I have been with the firm, I'm a litigator. So I have been involved with countless harassment lawsuits. So as we go along, I'm going to tell you about some of the cases that I've been involved with. Sometimes helps crystallize some of the concepts, helps you understand things a little bit, and makes things a little bit more interesting. So today what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk a little bit about the fire district as a place of employment or a workplace. I'm going to talk about the different types of harassment. I'm going to give you some case law examples. Review your district policy. I did have copies of the district policy back here by the sign-in sheet if anybody needs them or wants to take a look at them after the presentation. And then I'm going to talk towards the end, primarily focus on supervisory liability. So supervisors out there, listen up at that area. So of course the goal of training is to try and prevent harassment. Try and put people on notice that their behavior may cross into the lines of a violation of district policy. And if we teach you about the harassment, teach you your behavior may not be appropriate, hopefully that will prevent some harassment from happening in the future. That's really the goal, right? Now harassment is kind of a cancer in a workplace. As soon as there is an allegation of harassment, you're going to find two camps forming. You're going to have the camp that is supporting the person who was being harassed, and you're going to have the camp that was supporting the person who was the harasser. And there is no gray line. Makes for a very divisive workplace, makes for a very inefficient workplace because nobody wants to work together, people are arguing, it's very tense. And really, it's not a very pleasant place to come to work. So hopefully by conducting this training, it'll help prevent any of that. Now the firehouse as a workplace has its own challenges, and it's kind of a unique environment. First of all, the firehouse is not your house. Even though you sleep here, you eat here, you spend extended periods of time here, it is not your home. Although you may be comfortable here as if it were your home, you have to always remember it is your place of employment. Now there is certainly a casual atmosphere and you get to know the people on your shift very well. You know, you play poker or hang out and watch movies during your downtime. But that casual atmosphere does not make this just a hangout environment. It is always your place of employment. And even if you happen to be related to somebody you work with, when they are here, are your coworkers, they are not your family, okay? So you always have to treat people like coworkers. The other thing about the firehouse as a place of employment is, it is a very large workspace. It is not just the four walls of this building or any other station you may have. When you go out to the side of a road to respond to an accident call, that's your place of employment, that's your workspace. When you respond to an alarm at a corporate building, that's your workspace. When you're dropping off a patient at a hospital, that is your workspace. And all of the district's policies follow you to those workspaces. So anytime you're acting in your capacity as a district employee, that is your workspace. So it's a really large area. Now, a number of years ago, there was an article that was written saying that the fire district or the fire service was at increased risk for harassment for a couple of reasons. First of all, it is a mostly homogeneous workforce. I mean, take a look around. It's mostly white males. Very few minority members, very few female members, and there's a lot of young employees, mostly because of the physicality of the against young employees, but you know, as you get older, you get a little bit more wisdom and you get a little bit more control with your behavior and maybe make some better judgment. So young employees, you know, might lead to lack of judgment. There's also a lot of disparity in the power between employees. This comes from your ranking system. If you are given an order from someone who outranks you, and it's a lawful order, you are required to follow that, even though it might be, the power might be being abused through that order. And so you can be harassed even through a lawful order. There's also a lot of low-intensity time on your hands in between calls. Some days busier than others, and you know, what's the saying? Idle hands is the devil's playground. I think that's what they're talking about here. And finally, there's either tolerance or encouraged consumption of alcohol off duty. So when you guys get together, you're not sitting around drinking tea. You're having some fun parties, barbecues, whatever. And with alcohol comes decreased judgment again. So that was the conclusion of this article. Now there's a variety of different types of discrimination and harassment that can occur in a workplace, particularly in the fire department. First of all, you have just sort of a general discrimination. That's racial or ethnic discrimination. Any discrimination targeted at a protected class. The second type is sexual harassment, and that's primarily what we're going to focus on here today. There's also employment classification harassment. That can be part-time versus full-time employees, union versus non-union, contract employees, that type of thing. And then you just have the general harassment and, you know, the kind of the bully in the workforce, who is just bullying because that's just how he is or she is. So those are the different types, primary types of harassment. Now there's a variety of laws that are implicated in harassment litigation. The first is Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. It prohibits discrimination based upon race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. Section 1983 is also a federal law. It implicates violation of civil rights. You have discriminated or against me or harassed me in some way, and you have now infringed upon my federal civil rights. In Illinois, we also have the Illinois Human Rights Act. It prohibits discrimination based upon any of the protected classes under Title VII, and then adds a whole variety of additional classes like age, military status, disability, pregnancy. Now we've got sexual orientation, transgender. In Illinois, there's quite a few different protected classifications. Now, when you hear sexual harassment, you know, what immediately pops into your head, it's usually male and female, right? Well, not necessarily. There's a lot of cases where it is male on male, it is female on female, it is female on male. So it can pretty much take any shape that you can imagine. The bottom two classifications I have here are non-employees versus employees. Well, how can that happen if we're talking about sexual harassment in my workplace? Well, I remember a couple of minutes ago when I said your workspace is rather large. And so whenever you go to that accident on the side of the road and you're dealing with the drivers or people from other agencies who responded, those are non-employees that can harass you or you can harass them. When you're dropping off a patient at the hospital, you've got nurses and doctors and administrators. They can harass you and you can harass them. So, like I said, anytime you are acting in your capacity as a district employee, you are taking your district harassment policies with you. So, I feel like I have been harassed here in the district, and I'm not happy about it, so I go to the chief and I let the chief know I've been harassed, I want you to take some action. So the chief conducts an investigation, he comes back. I don't think that there's been any harassment here. And I don't think he's right. I don't think the investigation was done thoroughly or properly, and I'm going to file a lawsuit. But before I file that lawsuit, I have to either go to the EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, that's a federal agency, or the Illinois Department of Human Rights. Of course, that is the state agency. These are administrative agencies that were set up by both the state and the United States government to try and address the overflowing caseload of sexual harassment cases. And the goal really, when these agencies were first initiated, was to try and have some of these cases handled by these administrative agencies to keep them from actually going to court. Maybe they could be settled before they went to court, and if they did, great, then that's one less case that went to court. So if I don't think that the chief has handled my case right, what I have to do is I have to file a charge with one of these agencies. Now, if you file it with one agency and it turns out it really should be filed with the other, it's okay because they figure it out and they send it to the right agency. And that charge would say something to the effect of, I was sexually harassed, I told my employer didn't do a full and thorough investigation, and nothing happened, no discipline was given out. So, first thing that would happen is that agency would send the chief notice saying, there's been a charge filed against your district. And the district would have to file what's called a position statement. And that would say, kind of tell the story of what happened and how the investigation was done and how things go. And we send that in, and the agency would make a determination. With the Illinois Department of Human Rights, there's always a fact-finding phone call. With the EEOC, there's not. And sad to say, but probably 95%, if not more, of these cases are dismissed because they don't have the time to do a full investigation. So they send out the complainant, in this case me, they send me a letter, right to sue letter, and now I can go to court. But if I had gone straight to court, my case would have been immediately dismissed. And you do have, this does set up some timeline parameters. Usually it's 365 days. In some cases, it's 180 days. So it's a little bit shorter than a regular lawsuit type thing. And then once you get your right to sue letter, you have 90 days to file your lawsuit. So let's talk about the legal definition of sexual harassment. So there are 3 different types of sexual harassment. All of them involve some type of unwelcome conduct, whether it be physical conduct, verbal conduct, slurs, you name it, as long as it is unwelcome conduct. The first 2 types fall under the quid pro quo type sexual harassment. That is when submission to or rejection of that conduct is made a basis for some type of an employment benefit or detriment. So prong 1 and 2 are kind of the opposite of each other, but still fall under quid pro quo. And I'll go through those in more detail in just a minute. The third type of sexual harassment is called hostile work environment, and that occurs when the employer either creates or allows to be created such a hostile environment that the employee cannot do their job. So let's talk about quid pro quo, and again, that's the first 2 prongs of the definition. There is a direct link between the harassment and employment benefit or detriment. Literally a straight line. If you sleep with me, I will give you a promotion. It's really that blatant. It's very easy to identify this. This is the, quote, Harvey Weinstein type of sexual harassment. You come to my hotel room and watch me masturbate in the shower, then you get to be the star of my next movie. there has to be job benefits or detriments connected to the sexual harassment. So some examples of this are, a supervisor says you get the next promotion, you get a pay raise, you get transferred to the shift that you want to be transferred. If you go on a date with me, give me a sexual favor, sleep with me, whatever. Or conversely, you have rejected my sexual advance, you rejected my offer for a date, and now all those things that you wanted out of your job, you do not get. So it can be either a positive or a negative. To establish a prima facie case of quid pro quo sexual harassment, you have to show that the conduct is unwelcome and it's based on sex. Now, we had a case a number of years ago with a paramedic student who was working with the district trying to get her ride-along hours. And, young girl, really perky, really energetic, very, very personable, and caught the eye of one of the full-time firefighters. So he was not outwardly giving any indication that he was attracted to her, but he got her Snapchat and he got her cell phone number, and started to send her Snapchats and started to send her texts. And she just thought he was being friendly initially, and then things ramped up. One day, her car would not start. It was in the wintertime. And right at that same time, she realized her car wouldn't start. She'd come back in. A call came in with some type of procedure that she needed to get for her ride-along time. And so she said, "Oh, I'm going to go ahead and go on this call." And this firefighter said, "All right, well, I'll jump your car while you're gone. Leave me your keys. We'll get it going." So she goes out on the call. He texts her about half hour in. "We got your car running. It just needed a jump. I'm going to leave it run out in the parking lot." She said, "Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it." And he said, his response was, "We can talk about payment later," which she thought was kind of an odd thing, but she didn't give it a second thought. Thought maybe he was joking. So as things ramp up, he continues to send her texts and Snapchat, and his form of quote payment was, "I want to see pictures of your boobs. Send me a picture of your boobs." And she just laughs it off because she really needs the ride time and she doesn't want to rock the boat. But he keeps at it. And every time there is something like she needs, some kind of a procedure that she needs for her ride along, he'll say, "Well, you can come along with me, but you're going to have to pay." And he made this statement over and over and over again. And she just laughed it off and tried to divert, never complained, never said anything to anybody. Nobody knew this was going on. So she finishes her ride time. She gets her paramedic certificate. All is good, right? About 2 months after she's done, she gets a text from him. It is a picture of him wearing his casual blue, like you guys have on, hat on, and across the fire district logo, and across the front he's got boobs, ? And she lost her mind. It was the straw that broke the camel's back. And she took a screenshot of that, and she went in and she turned it into the chief and said, "This has been going on the entire time of my ride along. I never said anything. I was hoping it would stop. This is ridiculous." And pointed to all these different things that he had, quote, asked for payment. And not surprisingly, that guy lost his job. So that's an example of quid pro quo. If you give me pictures of your boobs, I'll let you do this procedure. I'll jump your car for you. I'll do whatever. So that's a good example of quid pro quo. The other thing with quid pro quo sexual harassment is it just needs to happen one time to give rise to a cause of action. So in that girl's case, the request for pictures pictures of her boobs. One occasion, in order to go on a call, was enough for her to make a claim. Now, the other type of sexual harassment is called hostile work environment, and that is the third type. And in this case, the employer either creates or allows to be created a sexually charged atmosphere to the point where either the employee is scared to come to work or is so uncomfortable at work they can't do their job, or they're too afraid to do their job. You know, I've had a bunch of these type of cases over the years, and actually the one example that I just gave you, the ride-along student, that can actually cross over into the hostile work environment, because there were times that she was afraid to go on ride-alongs and whatnot with that guy because of his behavior towards her. But a couple of examples of hostile work environment: we have an administrative assistant who had been with the district a number of years, and the district went through kind of a hiring spurt, got two, and two of the guys that were hired ended up on the same shift and literally brought out the worst in each other. So how this district was set up is they had administrative offices on one side, they had the bay, and then on the far side of the bay there was kind of a long, thin closet on the outside of like the outside wall. And in that closet they stored office supplies, paper, toner. They had filing cabinets of old, maps and plans and ordinances and you name it. So the administrative assistant frequently had to go out into that closet to get different things or to file things. So these two guys on this particular shift, initially she'd walk across the bay in the morning. Hi guys, good morning, just being friendly. And they were just very friendly back initially. And then it was, oh, I like your outfit today. You're looking good today. And then it slowly progressed to they would walk next to her very closely to the point where she was uncomfortable. And then finally there was a comment that they wanted to bend her over the fender of one of the engines one day and have her way with her. So she, not surprisingly, got creeped out by this and tried to avoid walking through the bay when these two were working or were around. So she would ask other people. The town chief would walk by, hey, would you mind going to get me a ream of paper out of the closet? Yeah, no problem. Somebody else would walk by, can you do this? And then she sat right outside the chief's office, and the chief started hearing her ask people to get things out of the closet, and they'd had a mouse problem in there a couple of years previously, so the chief said, hey, do we have mice in the closet again? I hear you don't want to go out there. And she started to cry and told the chief what had happened. So not surprisingly, those two guys still on probation, and they were gone. So that's an example of how part of her job was to go to this closet and get the office supplies, and she was scared or offended or nervous to even walk by these guys and couldn't do part of her job. And another administrative assistant who, I don't know why, but for some reason a couple of guys thought it would be funny just to mess with her. And so they would leave dildos in her desk, they'd leave pornographic images in her desk. Sometimes when she would wake up her computer, there'd be a pornographic image on her computer, and they just thought it was hilarious. And one morning, and she got to the point where she was afraid to open her desk drawers because she didn't know what was going to be in there. And one morning, she woke up her computer. The chief happened to be walking by, and it was one of those days when there was an image on there, and she was like, Chief, it's not me, it's not me. And of course, it knew it was not her. So, but again, that is her place, that is her workspace, and she was scared to open the drawers because of what might be in it. So in hostile work environment, unlike quid pro quo, you don't need to show any direct benefit or detriment judgment. It's just happening because it's happening. It is not, you know, affecting any of their benefits. And the conduct has to interfere with the person's ability to do their job in some way, shape, or form. Examples of hostile work environment are, you know, the creepy boss or creepy supervisor who is always, you know, coming up to, you know, the employee. I just had a case where we had a firefighter who, he was Mr. Back Rub, and he liked to come up and touch everybody and give them back rubs. And this one particular girl, I see some smirks. We got a back rubber around here? Yeah. All right. So we had a female who did not take kindly to this, and after about 5 million times telling this guy not to touch her, she finally made a complaint about it. But that's the kind of thing. Vulgar jokes, you know, talking about, you know, your weekend sexual conquests, or, you know, your whatever you're doing with your spouse. And then at the end here, I've got accidental touching.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
If he was a, like, obsessive bag robber to everybody, is that still wrong?
Yes.
It is. You should not be touching your coworkers.
Just if you're singling out one person, is that the problem?
No, he was touching it, but she really, really didn't like it. And she told him repeatedly to stop. Now, the other people, you know, might have cringed a little, but never said anything. But she repeatedly told him to stop, and he would not stop. He was saying other things to her, too. That wasn't the only thing. But don't touch your employees, okay, or your coworkers. Let's put it that way. Accidental touching. So I've had a number of cases, but the one that's probably the most illustrative is a female paramedic. She would, so this particular district had kind of shuffled its shifts. They were having some personality conflicts, and, you know, people got put on shifts with, it was a rather large district and with people they didn't know that well. So she gets assigned to a new shift, and she's assigned to partner an ambulance with, you know, let's call him Joe. So she and Joe were working, seemed to be getting along fine, until one day they're in the back of the ambulance cleaning up after a call and restocking, and Joe falls on her, and his hand lands in her crotch. And he stands up, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so clumsy, I really didn't mean anything, you know, are you okay? I'm so sorry. So she's suspicious, as most female firefighters would be at that point, but doesn't say anything, just says, okay, yeah, you know, whatever. And, you know, kind of plugs it into the back of her mind. About 2 shifts later, they're in the back of the ambulance again, cleaning up, restocking after a call. He falls again. This time his hands land on her breasts. And this time she knows it is not an accident. Of course, he stands up, oh, I'm so sorry, so sorry. And so she doesn't report it. She just goes to her battalion chief and says, hey, you know, I'm new to the shift. I'd like to work with somebody else on a different ambulance so I get to know people. The battalion chief doesn't think much of it. Okay, yeah, no, that sounds fine. So he starts assigning her, you know, to another partner. But he notices that at the beginning of every shift, she comes up to him and says, hey, I want to make sure that I'm not working with Joe. And finally the battalion chief said, what's up with Joe? Why don't you want to work with Joe? Because now it wasn't just, I want to work with other people. It became very obvious she was avoiding Joe. And so she finally told him what had happened. Now, Joe, of course, said, oh, it's just an accident, and, you know, whatever. It was total accidental touching. So there was ultimately some discipline for that. He didn't deny it happened, but said it was an accident, but it seemed a little too convenient. So that is a way that this female firefighter, now she is uncomfortable doing her job, right? right? She doesn't want to be in the back of the ambulance with Joe because he's, quote, falling on her and touching her sexual organs. All right, so a few slides back, I mentioned that the conduct has to be unwelcome. All right, so how do I know if my conduct is welcome or unwelcome? Well, some people will say to you, I don't like hearing that language, I don't like hearing your jokes, I don't like watching whatever material you're showing, I don't like that. And so they're making it obvious to you. I had a female firefighter one time, I was giving this presentation and was talking about the welcome or unwelcome, and she raised her hand and said, first week I was here, this guy started pinching my ass every time I would walk by, and I turned around and punched him in the nuts as hard as I could, and I never had another problem. Okay, so that was an outright rejection. She let that guy know. I had another female firefighter who said that when she started, she was the only female on the shift, and like at night, the guys would go into the day room and put on like a pornographic movie, which I still to this day do not understand. But anyways, they're watching porn in the day room, and she's like, well, what am I gonna do? You know, I'm the only female. And finally, she went in there and she just sat down. And they're looking at each other and they're looking at her, and then one of them says, you know, you're kind of making us uncomfortable here. And she said, well, how do you think this makes me feel? And that was the end of the pornographic material on that shift. So she made it clear, I don't like you guys doing this, you need to cut it out. So the problem becomes when you have the mixed signals. You know, you're laughing at some of the jokes, but the other jokes are a little offensive, or, you know, for example, the paramedic student, she just sort of like blew off the send me pictures of your boobs comments because she didn't want to rock the boat. You're going to hear that a lot during this presentation. Most of these victims don't want to make complaints and they don't want to rock the boat because, you know, then they're going to be a snitch, or they're going to be, you know, looked at poorly by the rest of the staff. So if you choose, and as your legal counsel, we're telling you not to do any of this stuff, but if you choose to watch certain media or send out gifts or emails that are off color, or tell jokes that are off color, or use language that is off color, or to pinch somebody, you better make darn sure who you are including in your audience, because if they don't like it, you have now just opened yourself up to some type of disciplinary action, okay? So mixed signals are hard, and I say don't even go down that road. The other thing with the fire district is soured romances. A lot of dating in the fire service. It happens all the time. You spend a lot of time together, you get to know each other pretty well, and next thing you know, you're dating. Well, it's all great when it's hearts and flowers and, you know, the birds are chirping and everything's going smoothly. Problem comes when you break up, and inevitably you break up. So then next thing you know, you've got maybe a power disparity. Maybe somebody outranks the other. And now, after the breakup happens, well, I was only dating him because he made me. And he said if I didn't go out on a date with him, then X would happen. You've got a quid pro quo allegation, right? Or, you know, I just can't work with him anymore. Every time he looks at me, I have to leave the room. Well, now we got a hostile work environment situation. So Carl Addison is one of the senior partners in our law firm. His comment in this area is, don't get your honey where you make your money. That solves that problem. So even though your policy does not prohibit dating somebody within the district, you'll save yourself a lot of problems if you don't. Ultimately, we prescribe the MOV test. The MOV test is if it is not any type of video material, social media material, joke, language, magazine, whatever media that you would show your mom, it's probably not appropriate for your place of employment. Now, with hostile work environment, the courts also kind of look at the behavior, all right? They look at the totality of the circumstances, and what that means is they're not going to judge a fire district the same way they would a white-collar accounting firm downtown Chicago. It's a totally different work environment, and the courts will take that into consideration. So the courts will look at the different types of conduct. So I've talked about a variety of different conduct here today, right? I've talked to, video conduct and jokes or language, and then I've also talked about physical conduct, right? So if there are, physical conduct is considered a more severe type of conduct. So you need less of those instances to file some type of a claim. Whereas if it's verbal conduct, you're going to need to show quite a few. You essentially need to show a pattern of repeated misconduct with hostile work environment to make your claim. Now, it is very, very rare, but occasionally isolated instances will happen that you can have one instance and file your claim. And what I have up here as an example is a rape. Of course, the court is not going to require you to be raped on multiple occasions before you can file your claim, right? One time, and that's enough. So so they look at that. Again, frequency of the conduct, severity of the conduct, physical versus verbal. There has to be the interference with the person's ability to do their job, and the conduct has to be to the point where if you took somebody off the street and put them in that employee's role, would they feel uncomfortable? Would they feel like they were being harassed? And then with hostile work environment, unlike quid pro quo, the conduct can be directed at a group of females, group of homosexuals, whatever. And so the courts will also look at that. Now, the courts have two other types of standards they look at. The objective standard, which, like I just said, if you took the average Joe off the street and put them in that position, would they feel harassed? So the court will consider that. And then the subjective standard. Did this particular plaintiff feel like they were being harassed? Well, what's the difference between that? Well, all of us have our histories, right? Before we started work here, we were children. We were all raised by different people. Some people were abused by their parents. Some people had stranger sexual assaults. Some people had sexual assaults by babysitters, whatever. Everybody's got their baggage. Some people are in current abusive domestic relationships. So when somebody comes to your place of employment and is working and doing their job, but they've got all this baggage, they might be a little bit more susceptible to your conduct than somebody who did not have that baggage. And the court will take that into consideration as well. Now, there are 4 levels of hostile work environment and sexual harassment. The first is sex role stereotyping. This is when the harassment is directed at a group. We make all of the women do clean the bathrooms every day, not because they are super awesome at it, but because we are men, we are more plentiful, it is a demeaning job, and we're showing our authority by making them do this demeaning job. So that's an example of sex role stereotyping. Gender abuse would be pornographic material, posters, jokes concerning gender or sexual conduct with gender. Individual targeted abuse. Examples of that would be the 2 administrative assistants that I talked about. They were being targeted by the groups of firefighters that they worked with in different ways. And then finally, sexual harassment can not only give rise to a civil claim, but it can give rise to criminal charges. If you touch somebody in a way that they did not approve of, give them a back rub, it can be a battery in the state of Illinois. If you touch somebody in an offensive manner, be a battery, and depending on the circumstances, it can be a felony. So keep that in mind.
What's the go for that woman that punched the guy in the balls?
I'm sorry.
You know how you said that the female,
Yeah.
she got pinched, so she punched him in the
Yeah.
testicles or whatever?
Mhm.
Would that, or is that basically self-defense, so it's
Yeah, the chief pretty much determined that guy asked for it. So, yeah, I mean, criminally, yeah, that was probably a battery, but he battered her first, so, she responded. Yeah, they both committed batteries there. All right, so those are all the definitions of sexual harassment. So say I feel like I've been sexually harassed. I haven't said anything. It's been going on for 6 or 9 months, and I finally am like, I can't take it anymore. So I go to the chief and I make my complaint, and chief's like, I'm so sorry. We're going to do a full investigation. Thank you for bringing it to my attention. We really appreciate it. So I leave that day. I've got a weight off my shoulders, thinking, phew. I finally told it's going to stop. Things are going to get better here. Well, my next shift, I come in, I walk into the kitchen to grab some coffee, and a couple of guys are there. I'm like, hey guys, how you doing? Nobody says anything to me, and they just turn and walk out. That was weird. So I get my coffee, and things are going fine during the morning. It's time for lunch. I go in to have my lunch, and my plate is turned over, or there's no plate set for me where I usually sit. What's going on? Every time I walk into a room, the people leave. There's training going on. I didn't get told the training had started, and when I get there, my battalion chief yells at me for being late. What is going on here? Well, what's going on here is something called retaliation. Retaliation occurs when a sexual harassment victim suffers some type of negative reaction from complaining or turning in the abuse. It can come in a whole variety of forms: poor evaluations, decreased work opportunities. The bottom one I have here is the mob mentality. That's what I was just talking about. Now all of a sudden everybody's against me because I complained about Joe, who happens to be real popular with everybody else. And I'm just a snitch, and I'm a bad sport, and nobody's taking my claims or my feelings very seriously, and now nobody wants to work with me, and they're retaliating against me. Now retaliation, quite frankly, is a whole lot easier to prove than the harassment itself. And I can't tell you how many retaliation claims over the years, when the initial harassment complaint turned out to really be nothing, but because, the co-workers or the person who had the complaint lodged against them started taking retaliatory action, ended up in a lawsuit, and the person ended up collecting quite a bit of money. A couple of examples of retaliation claims. We had a chief who had been accused of sexual harassment by 2 females. Now, those females left this district and had started to work at another district before they filed their claim and lawsuit. But, lawsuits take years to go through the pipeline. And in this occasion, there was a lot of discovery. Although those 2 females were in a new place, where were all the witnesses to the sexual harassment going to be from? The original place, right? Where the chief was still the chief. So all the firefighters in that district were called to give depositions, and 2 firefighters in particular, a male and a female, gave depositions. Now, they did not fully throw the chief under the bus, but they were not that complimentary to his behavior, and maybe the chief took a little issue with some of the things they said. The chief was sitting in the deposition. He just sat there, just listened, didn't give any kind of expression. After the deposition was over, he didn't say anything to them, never said anything to them about their deposition or their testimony. But all of a sudden, these 2 firefighters started being written up for things, tiny little picky things, and the write-ups became so plentiful that the male firefighter demoted. And so the two of them are like, what is going on? Why are we being written up all the time? So they go out to lunch one day, and they're talking, and, you know, when did we become the redheaded stepchildren of the district? And they traced it back to the deposition. And they figured out that the chief was retaliating against them for their testimony. Now, they were not victims of the sexual harassment, but they did cooperate in truthful testimony that favored the victims. So they filed a complaint with the EEOC saying they were being retaliated against by the chief, and ultimately filed their own lawsuit. So now we have two lawsuits going on, right? We got the original sexual harassment one, the two female firefighters, and now we have a retaliation one against the chief. So we were pretty confident that we could defend this retaliation claim because the chief did a pretty good job of papering the discipline. Everything was well written up, everything was documented. You know, the male and female firefighters had essentially admitted most of the conduct. It was pretty good. We felt very, very good going into court. So we're about 2 weeks out from the trial, and we get a call from a firefighter who worked at it under the chief, and he said, I just want to let you know that the chief is calling everybody into his office and essentially threatening that he's going to make their life a living hell if they say anything even vaguely like what these other male and female firefighter had said. So what is the chief telling him he's going to do? He's telling him I'm going to retaliate against you guys if you don't back me up in this lawsuit, right? So our entire witness list has now been tainted by the chief, by our own client. Totally blew up the case. Well, we can't put any of these people up on the stand, right? Because what if the other attorney asks, has the chief ever retaliated against you? Has the chief ever retaliated against you? Has he ever threatened you? They're under oath. The answer is yes. 2 weeks ago, he called me in his office and said if I didn't cooperate in this trial, then he would retaliate. So we call the insurance adjuster who says, settle, 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 settle immediately, and we do get it settled. Well, the district board is kind of mad at us. Well, why are you guys settling? You know, you told us you could defend us. And once we told them what the chief had done and how he had blown up the case, the board understood a little bit better, and you know, now the chief wasn't looking so good. He didn't last too much longer at that district after the third possible lawsuit against him. So that's an example of how retaliation can just keep going and going and going. So let me go through some of the harassment lawsuits. So we've got in the Providence case, this is the first female firefighter in this particular district. And literally from day one, she is being peppered with sexual harassment. She is a vegetarian. The guys call her food dyke or lesbian food. They're constantly talking about her breast size, talking about their penis sizes, talking about sexual positions she likes, sexual positions they like, you name it. So because she was the first female, they had to establish female restroom facilities for her, and the plumbing might not have been 100% up to code, and there was constant overflows in the female restroom. So everybody was talking about how women are pigs, and we never had plumbing issues before the women showed up, yada yada. At a union party, they approached her, asked her if she wanted to get involved in a gangbang with everybody. She said that she was constantly having her bra snapped, or people accidentally touching her by brushing up against her. And a lieutenant thought it would be a really good idea to show her a video that he made of he and his girlfriend having sex. Okay. She said there was pornographic materials literally everywhere, particularly in the day room. So she went and she complained, and she said, look, I'm trying to be a good sport here, but it's getting to be a little too much. And her supervising officer said, you know what, just brush it off, because if you complain about it, it'll just get worse, and they're not used to working with women, and you know, it's all right, just let it go. And it finally got to the point it was too much. So she filed a lawsuit. She was also asked out on dates or asked to participate in sexual conduct literally every shift. So she tried to correct the problem. She complained about it a number of times. Ultimately, she was awarded $275,000 in damages. In the McNamee case, this is a retaliation case. So we've got a male fire lieutenant. This guy is, the chief loves this guy. Fair-haired boy. Chief thinks he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. Long future here in the district. You know, you're my man. So right after there's a promotion coming up, and he tells this lieutenant, "You are number one on my list. I'm gonna, you know, you're gonna be the one promoted next." So right after this happens, this lieutenant happens to observe the president of the union pretty egregiously sexually harassing a female firefighter. And so he goes to the chief and he says, "Hey, I just saw this happen." Well, what he didn't calculate into the equation is that the union president and the chief were best friends. They golfed all the time, they played cards all the time. And the chief did not take kindly to this guy reporting about his best friend. So when it came time for the promotion, all of a sudden, guess who didn't get a promotion? And this guy, the lieutenant, was not only did he not get the promotion, he was no longer the chief's fair-haired guy. He was being iced out of everything. He was being treated poorly. So he files a lawsuit, and ultimately what happened was the court said, yes, it is. This was absolutely retaliation. He also filed a claim for failure to promote. Now that claim did not go very far because a promise of a promotion is not a property right. Now, if he had been promoted and then had the promotion taken away, that would have been a property right that he had taken away. So because it was only a promise, that claim went away, but he was able to recover on the retaliation. In the Halasi case, we have a female fire inspector. Now, in this case, she's the only one in the department, and she claimed that she was working in a hostile work environment. She said that the chief called her a dumb blonde, that there was constant rumors that she was having affairs with coworkers. Whenever the secretary was on vacation, she had to do all the secretarial work, not the guys. And then she claimed that the city manager called her a bitter woman. What do we think? Hostile work environment or no? Yeah? Yeah. Okay. Well, no, actually. What the court said, this was very sporadic conduct that she complained of. It was not pervasive. Remember, pervasive and severe. And a lot of the evidence was not, or a lot of the claims were based on hearsay, which is not admissible in court. So if you go back and look at the dumb blonde comment, that allegedly was made from the fire chief to the deputy chief behind closed doors, and allegedly the deputy chief told somebody who told somebody who told somebody who got back to her. The deputy chief and the fire chief said it never was said. How do you prove that? You can't prove that one. Rumors of an affair with a coworker. How do you prove a rumor? You can't prove that one. So that one's out too. Filling in on the secretarial duties. Well, that was actually legit because she was a whiz on the software that they used in the fire inspection bureau, and the other guys were not so good. So she stepped in and was able to do it a lot quicker than anybody else. That's a legitimate business interest. And finally, the bitter woman comment was an odd offhand comment made at a fundraiser. A group of people standing around, the city manager made a joke. Everybody laughed, but this female, and she said, "I don't really think that's funny." And he said, "Oh, I didn't realize we had a better woman in the group. Ha 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 ha." And it's a bad joke, but it was meant as a joke nonetheless. And that was it. So we're down to the bitter woman comment. And that's not enough for a hostile work environment, and so they kicked that case right out. The Howley case, again, we have, anybody ever watch the show Rescue Me? Okay. You may recognize some of the facts from this one because there was an episode that this was based on. So we have a female firefighter, and she filed a claim saying that she was working in a hostile work environment. So what happened was there was a multi-alarm fire that was called out. She and her company responded. It was a very loud fire scene. Her lieutenant was directing her and a number of other firefighters on what to do. And it was so loud she didn't hear what he said, so she asked him to repeat himself. And his response to her was, "You dumb cunt, I told you what to do, go and do it." Which kind of rocked her back on her heels. She couldn't believe what she heard. And of course it was said in front of all of her male coworkers, who were also a little shocked. But she still didn't hear what he said. And so even though she was kind of rocked, she asked him to repeat himself again, and he said it again. So anyways, they go ahead, they finish the fire, she files a claim, and the district court said, you know what? It only happened one time, right? That's not a hostile work environment. That's not pervasive and severe. We're going to dismiss it. But the appellate court had a different opinion. And what they said was, the one time was so severe, it was in front of all of her coworkers. It was during what could have been life-threatening circumstances, and it could have impaired her ability to lead during those life-threatening circumstances. That's severe enough for us. They breathed new life into the case, and she ultimately did settle. So, did that, you guys remember that? And the chief is the one who said it to the female firefighter. He used the T word, but we'll go on with that. But anyway, so that's what we're based on. Now, a little bit closer to home here. A little bit closer to home here, in Oak Lawn, we have a female firefighter. Now, this is how nasty some of these cases get. Female firefighter, everybody kind of put their linens in one closet, and she started to notice when she would get her linens out that there was like white crusty stuff on top of her linens. Right? Yeah, okay. So initially she didn't know what it was, thought there was a leak or something in the closet, and then realized it was semen. Somebody from one of the other shifts was masturbating and ejaculating on her bed of linens. How gross is that, right? So she reports it to the lieutenant, who thinks it's hilarious. Oh, ha, they're just, giving you a hard time. Don't report it because it'll just get worse. And she just was really grossed out by the whole situation, as she should be, and thought, well, if they're ejaculating on my linens, what are they putting in my food? What else are they doing? And it really got into her head. And it got to the point where she took a medical leave for psych reasons, just because she couldn't work there anymore. So she kind of gets her head back together, and she's like, all right, I can do this, goes back to work. And she shows up, and she is immediately shunned and ostracized by everybody. They won't let her talk to them. They won't let her eat with them. They won't let her train with them. What are they doing? Yay! All right. That's exactly right. They're retaliating against her. And so she goes to the division chief, and it got to the point where she was concerned that if she got into some life-threatening circumstances, that that her coworkers would not have her back. So she goes to the division chief and says, I'm actually now in fear for my physical safety. And he blew her off too. She said there was pornographic material in every square inch of this department on a daily basis. And it got to the point where she was like, I can't work here anymore. They don't want me to work here anymore, and I can't work here anymore. So she started to apply to other areas. Now, we all know the fire service is a pretty small community, and so she would get to a certain level in her application process, and that chief would say, I know the Oak Lawn chief, I'm going to give him a call. Hey, chief, we have this current employee of hers who's applying in my district. What do you think of her? Well, the chief was a little short-sighted, and instead of saying, she's great, to get her off of his rolls, he said, you don't want her, she was not able to get another job, she decided to file a lawsuit. And she recovered $850,000, and she, from what I understand, is still working in the Chicago area as a paramedic. So, but that's a nasty one. Now this next one is not a fire service case, but it kind of shows you a little bit about how nasty these cases can get. So we've got a female employee here, and she says she's got a creepy boss. He's pinching her, he's, you know, giving her little gifts and telling her that when she opens the gift, she needs to give him, quote, sucky, sucky. Very charming. He calls her Trixie and, you know, demeaning. He's constantly groping her. So then the sexual assault start. The first one happened, she's in the stock room doing inventory. He comes up behind her and hits her in the head with his exposed penis. Also very weird. I don't know. You guys are beyond me, but anyways. So instead of running to the nearest police station like she should have, she continues to come back to work. The next time, he throws her down in the hallway, holds her down, and ejaculates, masturbates and ejaculates on her chest. So again, she does not run to the nearest police station. She calls 1-800, I got a creepy boss, and her employer says, you know what, we have policies. We have policies that prevent this. Let's use our policies. We'll conduct a full and thorough investigation to make sure that no inappropriate behavior is happening in our place of employment. So they send out the district manager. The district manager is like, I am here to enforce the policy. And what does he do? He brings the harassee and the harasser into the same room, makes them sit next to each other, and says to harassee, tell me what he did to you. And she is freaked out because at this point she's technically been sexually assaulted by this guy twice and is so freaked out, doesn't want to talk to him, doesn't want to be near him. She runs out of the room crying, and the district manager is like, I guess she doesn't have a complaint to make. Everybody have a good day, and heads back to district headquarters. And no further investigation was done. So she ultimately files a lawsuit. She got a whopper of a verdict here. And you'll notice that 80 million of that 95 million is for punitive damages. Does anybody know what punitive damages are? Kind of. There are two types of damages that can be awarded, monetary damages, that can be awarded in civil cases. One type is compensatory. If you're in a car accident, your car is damaged, and you have some medical bills, or you miss work because you're hurt from the accident, that is money you are out of pocket. Okay, so if you're being compensated, that's compensatory. Punitive damages are for willful and wanton behavior. That means that you intend to hurt that person, or you have acted with such willful and wanton disregard for their safety or for the policies that you need to be punished. And so she got a big whopper of punitive damages up there. Now, I'll talk about it in a couple of minutes, but I'll throw it in here too. Punitive damages are not covered by insurance. So if you happen to be found guilty of punitive damages, they come out of your pocket, they don't come out of your insurance company's pocket.
So they should put that district under it?
I'm sorry?
That district go under them?
Oh, no, that was actually a private company.
Oh.
Yeah, so, yeah, that wasn't a fire service one. It was like a rental company. So, yeah, they didn't go under it. So, a lot of times when I give these presentations, people say to me, oh, come on, you know, can't I use whatever, you know, language I want? Can't I tell a joke? Can't we talk about whatever we want at lunch or dinner or whatever? Well, yes, you can, but again, my warning that I said before, be careful who your audience is. You don't have the First Amendment right to use language, to talk about things, to discuss things that could be considered harassing, okay? So you gotta be careful who your audience is. Now, I also frequently have the the initial groans. Oh, sexual harassment training, why do we have to do this every year? That's ridiculous. Well, first of all, you have to do it every year because the state tells you you have to do it every year, so let's get beyond that. Second of all, maybe most of you are thinking, well, it's never happened here, it's not gonna happen here, I don't have to worry about it. Well, you'd be surprised. About 95% of sexual assaults and harassment goes unreported for years. And as you've heard through many of the stories I've told here this morning, a lot of the victims try and deal with it, try and ignore it, try and function without making complaints, and then ultimately do make a complaint. Now, I had a case a number of years ago. We had 2 female firefighters. One night went out, grabbed a beer together, and as the beers kept flowing, they started talking about different people they worked with. And one of them said to the other, I'm going to use Joe again. If there's a Joe in the audience, I'm sorry. What do you think about Joe?
Stick with Bob, Bob's fine.
Bob? Okay, all right, we'll talk about Bob.
Bob's in the audience.
All right. So what do you think about Bob? And the other one says, I don't like Bob. I find him creepy. I find him, really offensive. I just try to stay away from him. And the other one says, yeah, I have the same feeling. Why? And because the beers had been flowing, she said, so their sleeping quarters were, they had beds and they had drapes that you could draw around the beds for privacy. And the one said, I woke up in the middle of the night, I was sleeping, and he was standing next to my bed watching me sleep, masturbating. And she said, I didn't know what to do, closed my eyes, and hoped it would be done very quickly. And she said, I never told anybody about this, I haven't even told my husband about this, and the other one is looking at her with her jaw open, and she just thinks she's shocked. And the other girl says, that happened to me too. Turned out, Bob had been making the rounds with all the shifts, with all the females, and literally these 2 females went and talked privately to all the other females in the district. Every single one of them had had that same experience. Nobody had said a word. They traced it back to almost 5 years that Bob had been doing this. So obviously Bob got booted out, and he also got arrested, and I believe is serving some time right now. But so that's the kind of thing, these females, these victims, mostly females, they don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to turn anybody in. They don't want to be the one called the snitch or whatnot. And so they wait and they hope it will stop. They just want to do their job. So that kind of wraps up our sexual harassment. But there's also, as I talked about at the beginning, other types of harassment. Just general discriminatory harassment based upon protected classes. There is the same type of hostile work environment, qualifications, and you have to show that the person has a hard time doing their job because of their harassment. Now, this type of harassment is not because I don't get along with Bob or Joe or whatever, and we just don't see eye to eye on things. This has to be harassment that is targeted based upon one of the protected classes. And this can take a variety of different forms. It can be, racist slang, nicknames. I had a guy come up to me after giving one of these talks and say, he's a Middle Eastern guy, and said, my nickname around here is the camel jockey. And I'm like, okay. And I said, how do you feel about that? He goes, I don't like that. But that's the kind of thing. Racist drawings, gifts or memes that are being sent around, the jokes about, different ethnicities and that type of thing. In this case, like sexual harassment, it can be, the harassment relationship can take any form, male-female, male-male, female-female, subordinate, supervisor, non-employee, employee, you name it, it can happen. And what I'm seeing a lot of in the last probably 10 years is that people who are not the one being harassment are the ones that are turning the harassment in. Younger employees are saying, for example, the camel jockey one, I can't believe they're calling this guy a camel jockey, telling their supervisors, I can't believe that this is going on. So with this type of harassment, it can be reported by anybody. It doesn't have to be reported by the victim. And you also don't need to show any kind of job benefit or detriment with non-sexual. All right, so let's talk about your policy. I'm going to go through the purpose, definition, and your complaint procedure. Like I said at the beginning of the presentation here, the real goal here is to educate you guys so you don't engage in this behavior, and it keeps your workplace peaceful and pleasant, right? Also avoids lawsuits, like the ones that I've talked about here today. If everybody's treating each other with respect and dignity, pretty much you're going to have a peaceful workplace. And finally, it helps preserve the district's reputation. Now, I frequently go to Chiefs conferences or Northern Illinois Alliance conferences and that type of thing, and you hear the whispering between the chiefs. Hey, did you hear about Pleasant View? Did you hear about this? Did you hear about that? And usually it's one of our clients, and we're sitting there thinking, okay, we haven't heard about this yet, but no surprise, Monday morning, ring-a-ding, and there's the phone saying we got an issue. And so you guys don't want to be the ones on the front page of the Trib. You don't want to be the ones being talked about at the Chiefs conferences. It helps preserve your reputation. So your sexual harassment policy is policy 1.02. It reiterates both the quid pro quo and hostile work environment definitions that I've gone over here earlier in the presentation. There is zero tolerance for this behavior here at Pleasant View. And as I mentioned, this policy applies in your actual physical workplace here or during any district-related activity out in the community. It applies during conferences if you're attending on behalf of the district, applies during trainings you're attending on behalf of the district, emergency rooms, you name it, it applies. It covers not only the officers and other non-sworn employees, it applies to people who might be here taking a test, who might be applying for a job. It applies to contract employees. It applies to board members, trustees, vendors, and what about members of the community? Say you guys are having an open house with a touch the truck type of thing. Of course, they're going to be covered under this as well. Now, logically, the district would like complaints to be filed as quickly as possible after the incident occurred. Why is this a logical request? Well, let's think about it. If something happens today at noon during lunch and the complaint is made at 2 o'clock after the person thinks about it a little bit, and there were 8 guys sitting around at lunch that all heard or saw what happened, that's all going to be real fresh in their mind. If I wait a year and make that complaint, do you think any of those 8 guys are going to really remember what happened? Probably not. But that being said, there is no statute of limitations on this. As you've heard by a number of the examples that I have given here today, people come up years later, a year later, up to 5 years later in the case of the female's sleeping situation. So if it takes a little time for the person to get up their gumption to actually make a complaint, they can still make that complaint. Now, it may be that some of the evidence is gone or people's memories is not so good, so the case isn't so strong, but that doesn't prevent them from making the complaint. So if you observe sexual harassment going on, you should report it. Or you should talk to the complainant and encourage them to report it. Reports can be made to the person next up that is superior to you, or you can go straight to the chief or deputy chief, battalion chief, whoever you feel comfortable making that complaint to. Now, if you are female, of course, none of you really are, except for you, of course, and you are uncomfortable making a complaint to somebody of the opposite sex, you can request the district to have somebody of the same sex come be brought in so you can make your complaint. Frequently, districts bring in third parties, like myself, I do investigations all the time for districts, and I will take the complaint. So if the allegations are against the person's supervisor, of course, you don't need to make the complaint to the supervisor. You can go to anybody you're comfortable with. You don't have to confront the alleged harasser yourself. You don't have to go and wag your finger in their face and say, stop harassing me. But you need to make it known somehow that you don't like that conduct, whether that is saying, I don't like this, and just walking away, or, the extreme punching them in the nuts and letting them know. Whatever, however you want to do it, you need to make sure that it is made clear to that person that you don't like their behavior. So what happens once a complaint comes in, the district will fully and thoroughly investigate the matter. And again, the chief can designate somebody within to do the investigation, or they can hire an outside third party to do the investigation. And if during the investigation, frequently there are interim measures that are put into effect. That can be paid administrative leave, that can be shift changes, that can be whatever seems appropriate at the time. But you got to make sure that whoever the complainant is, that these interim measures do not appear to them to be retaliatory. That's very important. Now, the district will try and keep everything confidential as much as possible, but you firefighters are like a sewing circle and you are a chatty bunch. So things get around pretty quickly, but the district will do what it can to keep things confidential. At the end of the investigation, the complainant will be notified about the results of the investigation and what the district either plans to do, or if it was unfounded, why it was unfounded. If it turns out that harassment occurred, that can result in discipline up to and including termination. Now, do you guys have full-time union here, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so sexual harassment does not fall under progressive discipline. It is considered a major offense. So the district doesn't have to go through the steps of the oral and the written and the suspension. The district can go straight to termination because of the nature of the offense. So you should either report the matter orally or in writing to a supervisor or chief officer. That can be an email, that can be something handwritten, that can just be an oral meeting. Regardless of who takes that complaint, you should notify the chief. Let the chief know, keep the chief in the loop. The initial investigation will be initiated by the chief, and if it appears that there is based on the complaint itself, that there might be some teeth to it, the chief will initiate a full investigation. If harassment is founded, or if there's found to be harassment, there can be discipline, and the chief will take that action as necessary. Now, what happens if my complaint comes back as unfounded? Well, that can mean one of two things. First of all, it can mean there was a false complaint, and if it turns out it was a false complaint, the person who made the false complaint can't be disciplined for that. But more likely what happened here is there's some other type of conflict that doesn't really fall within the category of harassment. And in that case, more likely than not, the chief or the chief officers can conciliate with the parties and try and work out something to resolve the problem. Now, what are the consequences of finding or being an alleged harasser? Well, you could be disciplined, and again, it's not progressive, it's up to and including discharge. You could lose your job, your pension benefits, all that good stuff, and you could be named in a lawsuit. And if if there happen to be punitive damages, those come out of your pocket, they don't come out of the district's insurance. You guys also have a kind of general harassment, anti-violence in the workplace policy, and that is policy 1.12. Again, it's the same as the sexual harassment, same bases, except there's no sex involved. It's based on the protected categories, it addresses hate and violence, same type of investigation and complaint procedure, and this can also is considered a major offense, and so it is not subject to progressive discipline either, and so the same penalties up to and including termination. Interim measures can be put into place. You can have retaliation with these type of claims as well. And if you've got a situation where you're not really sure if it is harassment, but you're noticing a couple of guys or a couple of employees seem to be escalating and spiraling and things are getting progressively violent, you need to make sure you notify a supervisor to prevent anything from happening. If you see somebody really being victimized here, you should report it even if they do not. So let's talk about the importance of prevention here. First of all, training on a periodic basis, that's what we've got going on here today. The EEOC said that an employer who is exercising reasonable care has to create a policy against harassment and sexual harassment, train on that policy, and then implement the policy if necessary. So that's what we're doing here today. And if you do so and a complainant does not make use of that policy by filing a complaint and having an investigation done, their case can actually be thrown out. You've got to give the employer the opportunity to remedy the situation or to conduct a full investigation. Now, supervisors out there, listen up. If you are the one who is harassing the employee, then you are dragging the district down with you. Everything you do, you're doing on behalf of the district because the district has seen fit to elevate you in rank. It doesn't matter whether it's quid pro quo harassment or hostile work environment harassment. You are holding the district vicariously liable. And supervisors, by the way, if it is quid pro quo harassment, then the employer is strictly liable, which means that they can't make a defense. You have drugged them down. Now, supervisors also, you can be held individually liable for your behavior. Frequently we have lawsuits that name the district, the board of trustees, and individual employees, including frequently the chief. So you can be named, and like I talked about before, if you're named and there's some type of punitive damages that are awarded, you guys have to pay those out of your pocket. It doesn't come out of the insurance coffers for the district. So supervisors out there, you should be setting the tone for the workplace. You have been chosen to be elevated in rank because you represent the values of the district. You shouldn't be the one telling the jokes. You shouldn't be the one giving the back rubs. You shouldn't be one doing the inappropriate behavior. You should be able to inform your employees how to make a complaint. You should be able to take that complaint and help them through the process. If you see something going on, take some action. Don't just turn a blind eye. I had a case recently where every supervisor in this entire district knew that this particular employee was being harassed by another individual employee, and they just turned a blind eye to it, pretended they didn't see it. If you see it happening, step in. A lot of times you can nip the whole thing in the bud. Just say, hey, we're not having that on my shift. We're not having that here in the district. Cut it out. Consider this a warning. And then you should have some kind of supervisor book or file to take note. On October 2nd, 2023, I I saw Joe do this to Bob, and I told Joe that was inappropriate and told him we weren't going to have that anymore. And he said he would stop that. And you close that notebook, put it in your file, and everybody goes about their business. And then in 6 months, when Joe forgets that he said he wouldn't do it anymore and starts doing it again, now you've got 2 instances of his behavior, and now it's time to really take some action. If you can resolve the issues and the complainant is happy, and almost always they will be happy because they don't want to make complaints, then you've earned your money that day. And let the chief know too. Say, hey chief, I saw this happening, I stepped in, I talked to him, he said he wasn't going to do it anymore, I'll keep an eye on things. And I'm sure the chief will be appreciative of that. Of course, if there is a complaint going on, make sure nobody is being retaliated against. Know your employees. If you've got an employee who was really happy here and was really engaged with the rest of his shift, and then all of a sudden starts being standoffish and doesn't want to engage, well, it could be they've got some problems outside of work, but it could be that they are being harassed, and you should go out of your way, talk to that employee, and try and support them through their situation. And supervisors out there, if you are aware of something, some harassment that's going on, and like the one district I just mentioned, you just turn a blind eye to it and don't take any type of action, well, you can be named or held responsible or disciplined yourself. So it's important that you do take some action. So a couple of quick tips here. If an employee comes to you to make a complaint, you should make that complaint on behalf of that employee. Don't shove that employee off and say, that's over my pay grade, sorry, because that employee is going to get frustrated and is probably not going to go to the next level. Take that complaint seriously and help them, even if it involves you taking the complainant to the chief or somebody else to make the complaint. Don't just blow them off. They might get discouraged. You need to familiarize yourself with Pleasant View's policies, which is what we're doing here today. If somebody comes to you to make a complaint, you should take notes. You should get the who, the what, the why, the where, the how, the when. Get all the details that you possibly can. Note the complainant's demeanor. Are they sobbing? Can they barely get the words out because they're so upset? Or are they laughing it off? You know, that's important to know. And if the witness is, or if the complainant is willing to give a written statement, that's great. Have them do that, or have them send you an email, that's fine in this day and age. And then you've actually got it in your words. Also, you may need to identify some interim remedial measures. Is it a situation where somebody needs to be sent home for the rest of the shift because of, things blew up? Is it something where, somebody needs to be put on administrative leave? That's something to talk about with the chief. If you know that something is going on in your shift and there has been a complaint, make sure that there is no retaliation going on. Support the person who has made the complaint. And sometimes when you're supervisors, people will come to you and say, hypothetically, if this was going on, what should I do? Well, you can't keep something like that confidential to make sure that you find out if this hypothetical is a legit complaint. And if it is, then encourage them to come forward so you can take care of it. And if somebody wants to make a complaint, defend their right to do so. They have the right to work in a harassment-free workplace. So practically, there's a whole lot of concerns that are involved with harassment, sexual harassment. First of all, like I said before, there's harassment creates poor employee morale. There's immediate separation into 2 groups, and there's also internal investigations going on. You've got lawyers crawling around the place, interviewing people, and although we're really nice, nobody likes to have the lawyers come and do investigations. People lose their jobs, their pensions, and you don't want to be the one to go home and tell your wife that you're on administrative leave because you were sexually harassing somebody at work. never good dinner table conversation. And finally, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing for the district to have this happening under its roof. It's embarrassing for the person who's being accused of the harassment. And primarily, it's mostly embarrassing for the person who was being harassed. They didn't ask to be harassed. They just wanted to come to work and do their job. And now, next thing you know, they're in the middle of this shitstorm, and they don't know what to do. So take that into consideration as well. All right. Does anybody have any questions? No? All
I
right.
have a question.
Yeah.
Going back to like when you make complaints and stuff, and some people wait, 2 hours compared to like 5 years.
Right.
Have you ever had it where someone makes a complaint, they're on duty or like on shift, but the person they made it against retired or isn't here anymore?
Yeah, I have, and in that case, we still go ahead with a full investigation because our advice to our clients is that we want you to be reactive to their complaints. And so we usually do go through and make a full investigation. And if there's a finding that the person did engage in harassment or whatever, obviously you can't discipline them, but it usually is somehow gratifying to the complainant that, okay, my employer did have my back and they did make this finding. Usually they can move on and get through it. I've never had a lawsuit filed in a situation like that, but they're usually happy that the district does do something. Yeah.
What if there's a person that's always claiming to be, I guess, offended, or I don't like the movies you watch, or, I don't like the jokes you tell? When does it cross the line where that person's actually being the one to making everybody else uncomfortable? Like, they're the ones that are always saying, I don't want you doing that because they want it their way.
Okay.
Um,
Are they?
Like trying to use this as a weapon, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, that is a hard one